There we are.
Ah, beautiful. Great. All right, super. It's 4:30, so we will call to order the October 6th meeting, regular meeting of the BUSD Personnel Commission. Hello, everyone. Glad you're here. Secretary, would you kindly call the roll?
Yes, Chairperson. Chairperson Goldstein,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Zenner Davis,
Here.
and Commissioner Roeder.
Here.
We're all in
Great.
attendance, Chairperson.
Super. We have Brian Westover, Chief Cook and Bottle Washer, driving as well today. Yes.
That is correct.
All right, good. Thank you, Brian. Super. So let's move on to item 3 of our agenda, which is our public comment segment. We allot 15 minutes for this. I don't see a lot of public here right now. So I'll ask anybody who would like to make public comment either to use the raise hand icon or wave to me and let me know. And seeing none, we'll move on to approval and adoption of the agenda.
Move approval and adoption.
I'll second.
Wow. Okay. No discussion. We're all good. Okay. So am I. So all I will go ahead with the agenda as it is. Let's move on to item 5 then, which is approval of our meeting minutes. So
So
we
move
have-
to, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, we have meeting minutes from August 31st. Commissioner Zenner Davis, would you like to say something?
I was just gonna move to approve the meeting minutes unless there are addenda revisions that need to be made to it.
I have no revisions, so I'll second the motion.
Right. No revisions for me either. So all I will go ahead with those. Great. We'll move on to item 6, which are reports. So starting with the union, I'm not sure if there's anyone here from the union.
I don't see anyone, Chairperson.
All right, so maybe we'll skip them for the moment. I don't think I see anybody here from the district.
Well, Christie's here, but I don't think she's representing HR or the district, I think.
But I
So-
do, all right, okay.
Yeah.
Then why don't we skip them? We'll go to commissioner reports and give them a chance to make an appearance. And if not, then we'll go on. Fellow commissioners, Commissioner Roeder.
Well, my report was primarily, but not exclusively, intended for our union and district representatives, but I'll give it anyway. So the first was our continuing merit rules project. And to say that we had a very productive meeting on it. And I wanted in particular to start with thanking my fellow commissioners, to Heidi and Tim, for your tremendous diligence and ability to stay focused on this project that, although it seems never ending and will have an end date at some point, it may not be right away, but one of these days we'll finish it up and we'll have a lot to be proud of. And I thank you, my fellow commissioners, very much for that. And then also to our executive director for his diligence and keeping the train moving and the momentum going, and willingness to dive into all of the details with me. I tremendously appreciate that. And to Brian, who was there at the last meeting, and Aaron, who's been involved in the past, your contributions are very much appreciated. And as I think we've said in the past, please speak up, as you do, on any topic that comes up during our special meetings. And I'm very happy to see that Frank has joined us, because one of my areas of appreciation, I'm talking about the Merit Rules Project, is to both Frank and to Mildred and to all the others who attend our meetings from time to time. Both Frank and Mildred were present at the last meeting, and your contributions are absolutely invaluable. You add the employee perspective and the perspective of sort of the practical implications of what these rules mean. So I hope you'll continue to be able to join in the meetings and to provide your input. And I think you know that a number of the suggestions that have been made by Frank and Mildred and others have been incorporated into this draft already. So let's keep that up. So that's that. The other thing was more for the district, and that is, and I hope I'll be corrected that I'm wrong, but that I don't think I have seen our compensation and classification study contract on an agenda of the school board yet. And that really bothers me a lot. You know, I think Assistant Superintendent Samantha Tobias Espinoza told us first, I think that August 24th was going to be the date when the contract was approved. Then it became September 6th, I think. And as of the September, I think, 21st meeting, I still haven't, or September 14th meeting, September 21st. I don't think it's been approved yet. Again, I hope to be proven wrong about that. But if I'm not wrong, I really would like to understand why this contract is being held up. And lastly, I'm not entirely sure how we can go ahead with a meeting that is scheduled with the vendor who's going to do this compensation and classification study without having a contract in place, or at least the contract on the agenda of a board meeting. But that's going to be a decision for our chairperson and for our executive director. So thank you, chairperson, for indulging me this extra time. I appreciate it.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Really appreciate the comments and the observation.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Senator Davis.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a report, but I do have a comment, and it actually is related to what Commissioner Roeder was saying. I know that we'll be addressing reclassification shortly, and I am mindful that we are supposed to be doing a classification and compensation study, and so I second Izzy on there needs to be a fire lit to get that contract signed. But I would hope that at some point we could encourage and support supervisors in making sure that they're aware when staff might be taking on duties beyond their classifications. And so, you know, I understand that the work has to get done. And I know that in the heat, it's easy to ask someone to do something, unintentionally pushing them out beyond their job description. But if we can get to a place where supervisors are catching that on the front end, then maybe we can avoid having people working out of classification, or at the very least, catch it before they've been doing it for a few years. So.
And chairperson, I can wait for my turn to answer Commissioner Roeder's and Vice Chairperson Senator Davis's concerns, because I do have an update on that front.
Super. Okay, good. All right, we'll go ahead and do that. I'll make my remarks fairly brief then, and we will then circle back around to see if there are union or district comments. So I want to actually thank Commissioner Roeder for bringing up the contract, because that was one of my items, and I'll look for an update on that. The other thing I just want to give voice to is there are 3 school board seats up for election. And the upcoming election is on Tuesday, November 8th. There are multiple forums, both, print media and live interviews and all the rest. And anyone who is undecided should attend these and educate themselves. I really urge an informed decision. There are a lot of candidates and they all have very different approaches. I'll also recommend that there are some alternate sources this year that there haven't been in past years, one of which being the Berkeley Parents Union, which I believe our school board governor, Ty Alper, wrote about in not a flattering way, more of a critical way. And I hope folks actually will decide for themselves what they think of those outlets and those resources. It, I think is worth considering. And I think as an alternate voice, sometimes alternate voices get rough treatment at the beginning when they make themselves known. I hope that's not the case here. Personally, I think it's a legitimate voice. So those are my remarks. And with that, let's cycle back and see if the union has remarks. Anything, Frank, or do you have anything to say on behalf of the union, even though you're not an officer at this point? Okay, hearing none.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, now we hear you. Okay.
I apologize. I'm actually doing some other stuff right now, actually like work. No, I have no comments. I just want to say that I'm not here on behalf of the union. I'm just here on the behalf of, I guess, everybody.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right. You still use your BCCE insignia, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I'm union all the way, right? So
All right. Okay, so
All
no comments from the union. I don't think anything, I don't see anybody from the here to speak for the district, but I'll check one more time. Okay, all right, we'll skip, no one from the district here. Let's move on to our executive director.
Thank you, Chairperson. So before I go on to my regular report, to put the commissioners' minds at ease somewhat, I've been told by Assistant Superintendent Tobias Espinosa and Assistant Superintendent Pauline Follensby that October 12th is when the contract will be on the agenda. If for some reason it isn't, I will have the very unfortunate task of having to cancel our special meeting. So I have looked ahead. I won't speak to why there's a delay because frankly, it hasn't been on my end or our end. But that's all I can say, right? Really. But yeah, no, I've been told now that it's going to be on the agenda for the 12th. So as everyone knows, Aaron has been on leave until November 21st, and Brian has done a great job, Olga as well. Everybody has been stepping up. I want to thank, obviously, Aaron as well, because Aaron actually helped me with the new job description. And she came in and pinch hit and helped Brian with the agenda and helped me with the job description. Also, I want to send condolences and prayers to the families of the children we lost recently. It's my understanding it was in Oakland, but I know they were Berkeley kids. So our exams, we had 115 exams total, which is pretty amazing, all things considered, that now we're only looking at Olga and Brian doing this. We had 29 training and experience assessments, 72 written exams, 14 oral exams. So again, that's just an amazing job from commission staff, and it should be recognized, and it is, and I appreciate it, absolutely. 14 new hires, and before, I know that the commission is very thorough. Before you say, well, I count 15, It's 14 because one of the hires on the report actually transferred back to her old position. And we didn't have time. It happened after this was published and agendized, and it was also after the classified board report. So we didn't have a chance to kind of extract it, but I should note, it's Shauna Rabinowitz. She transferred back into her old job, but she's still on this report as a new hire, but I just wanted to cite that. 10 were new employees and 4 were promotions. So that's just really great. Some of you may have noticed an article in Berkeley Side about the need for after school program hires, and obviously we're going to be talking about a new job that's been created in after school a little later. But in response to that, we're trying to do an aggressive social media campaign with Careers in Government, with a Facebook page and Instagram. So we have out there a posting for the before and after school programs and the instructional aid to special ed. So we're going to track it. It obviously it costs money, and I think if we see success, then maybe something that we budget for next year to be a little more aggressive with this type of recruitment campaign. But I think we'll know in the next month or so if it's worth the investment. So we'll see. Brian and I are at the NeoGov conference. We have found a lot of the sessions to be very, very valuable in diversity, recruitment, training, branding, our websites. It appears that the general job market, especially for public sector, they were throwing numbers at us of like 40% less than last year or pre-pandemic, 60% less applications making it to the final round. I mean, so it doesn't give us comfort per se, because that's not good news, but it is a shared challenge. It isn't a Berkeley challenge. So for what it's worth, we do have to work harder in this area, but it's not exclusive to us or school districts. But so far it's been a good conference, and these conferences are only as good as us bringing the information back and coming up with some plans. And I think Brian and I are both just, our heads are full of great ideas. So we'll see what it turns into. We do have the special meeting scheduled. I hope that does move forward. I hope the contract is signed on the 12th. We've been talking about the class and comp for quite a while, and I'm very excited to have everyone meet the group. I think that they will do a great job for us. So we'll see if that meeting happens. And then last but not least, I am doing two presentations or trainings, if you will, on Professional Development Day, which is Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday. So immediately upon return, I'm going to be doing it's a classified specific professional development day. I have 2 modules. One is interviewing skills and the other one is resume writing. I've been promising the unions that I would not just be doing trainings or roadshow, as we like to call it, for administrators, but also for the employees. So this is something I'm excited about. Hopefully they find it to be helpful, and hopefully it results in some of our classified folks getting promoted and moving, within Berkeley Unified as a longer career path. So we'll see what happens. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just making a note. Thank you. All right,
you.
appreciate that. Let's move on to our consent items. Item 7. We have 6 lists. I'll ask my fellow commissioners if they have any comments, brief comments on any of these. I'll simply say that even though Erin is not here, we seem to be keeping up the pace. I noticed the interval between testing is still, 10 days or less. So kudos to keeping up that pace. And it looks like, aside from our favorite nutritional services role, you're getting candidates, and that's terrific. So does anyone else have any bit of discussion before we move on these?
I don't.
Commissioner Roeder?
Yeah, lower my hand there. I agree, Heidi, with you that these are, very robust lists, and they involve, all the positions in the classified service are tremendously important. There's no question. But the instructional assistant too for special education, the instructional technician, many of these lists now have school campus aide. They now have multiple individuals on them, and that's really great. And I want to sort of commend our executive director for these lists, and Brian as well. And also for the comment that he made regarding the social media campaign. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important that we are sort of thinking outside the box, that we're, getting as creative as we possibly can. I think when my only suggestion is when you're evaluating whether or not the social media campaign is working or not, I would just say, one, give it some time. It may not work the best right out of the box, but with more effort and more experience, it might be really helpful. And secondly, as far as the budget is concerned, all I hear from the Board of Education and from others that are involved in the school district is how important it is to fill in a timely way these classified positions. There have been many parents who are on the waiting list in the LEARNS program or in the BEARS program, and we are told that it's because there are open positions that and clearly we now have some great lists for those positions to be filled. So I commend both of you for being at the conference and for coming up with creative new ideas. Thank you. And as far as these eligibility lists are concerned, which is the topic at hand, I don't have any changes to them, and they look fine to me.
Great. Vice Chair, any comments from you?
Yeah, no, I'll second everything that you and Commissioner Roeder said. You always expect there to be some sort of a dip when you lose a key team member, but I think you guys are such a machine. And I think Aaron has set things in motion so that, you guys just seem to seamlessly be able to continue the work and continue to pack these lists. And it is great to see that we do have so many folks on those lists. And one of these days that food services will be as long,
And in demand.
and in demand. People will be like, at the doors banging to get in for those positions. But yeah, no, kudos, great work, you guys.
Right.
Thank you.
I think they might be a tired machine, but they're a machine.
That's true. We are
All
tired.
right, let's go for our consent list. So we have 6 items on the list. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move approval of the items A through F.
And I will second.
Great, and I agree. So we have approved our 6 eligibility lists. We'll move on now to our conference items. We have 4 conference items today. So we'll start with 4A, which is advanced salary step request by Francis Gay. Secretary, would you kindly walk us through?
Of course. Thank you, Chairperson. Respectfully, I think it's Felicia Gray.
I'm sorry, what did I say, Francis?
Yeah.
I know a Francis Gray, that's why, sorry, Felicia Gray. Okay.
My mother's name was Frances Gray.
Oh, really?
Oh,
All right,
wow.
you know a Francis Gay,
Wow.
Francis Gay too, also.
Wow, that's cool. So, in the case of Felicia Gray, we always talk pretty often about our Berkeley employees and getting professional development for them and how they advance. Well, Felicia is a great example of somebody who left, got an amazing education, and chose to come back to Berkeley. So by all means, when someone is that dedicated and has the advanced degrees and wants to come back into, of all things, our special ed job, when she made the request, I mean, this is an easier request probably than most, because I said, absolutely. So this is a recruitment, retention, and advanced step, because she's probably overqualified, but she's clearly a very passionate person who really, really cares about the job. So we are really, really excited to have her as an IA Sped 2. I think my hope actually is that she continues on. Not that I want to have another vacancy in IA Sped 2, but if you'll note her degrees and her preparation and everything that she has going professionally, I hope she continues to stay with Berkeley and that she has a future here. So I do strongly recommend an advanced step at step 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to discussion. Either commissioner have comments they'd like to make?
Yeah, I
Commissioner
think that I just was really impressed just reading the support letters that folks wrote for her, and the theme was clear throughout all of them. Just her connection to the students that she works with, and how quickly she was able to establish those relationships and integrate herself into into the work, once she got in. I was especially impressed with the one quote that says, "If there's no connection between a teacher and a student, there is no learning." And it just seems like that was the theme throughout these letters of recommendations with Miss Gray, that she really does instantly make a connection with these students, and that connection is seen through the work that these students produce and their comfortability. And so, yeah, no, it's great that she chose to come back to the district, given all of her experience and her training.
Super, thank you. Commissioner Roeder, you had some comments also?
I just wanted to echo exactly what Vice Chairperson Zenner Davis just said. I agree completely. And frankly, in my time on the commission so far, I have not seen an applicant with so many letters of recommendation that are so stellar as this one. So she is clearly to be appreciated for that. And then the only other thing I would say is, because in our step placement, advanced placements, we are supposed to take into account the difficulty in recruiting for these positions. And certainly the special education department, special education position is a very, very difficult to recruit for position. So I also am in favor of this advanced placement.
Super. I have a question, Secretary, that I hope you know the answer to. Is this a 10-month, an 11-month, or a 12-month position? IA Speds.
Well, we do have the summer program, so I
Right.
believe it's a 12-month. But when I'm pushing forward the advanced step, I'm probably optimistically considering that she's going to work the whole year because there's a need all year round.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
guess technically it's a school, it's an after school on the school calendar. So there's, I guess, you know, to answer your question, that I don't think there's a guarantee that she'd be there in the summertime, but I imagine she would be.
Interesting. Okay. For someone this qualified, you know, just the little I have learned about special ed after the, you know, the teaching year, and I forget at Berkeley, 186 days or
Yeah.
190 days or, you know, whatever it is. You know, there are typically after instructional assessments. I mean, this just seems someone who is so qualified. I would hope that it's somebody we would use on a 12-year or a 12-month cycle.
Or 12-year cycle, Chairperson. I mean,
Right.
like,
Well,
you know,
by 12 years, they'll be running the department, right? I mean,
well,
so- right.
and as I stated, I mean, I would love to see that. I mean, this is the kind of talent that we want to retain.
Right.
That's what we're doing, you know, so.
Right. No, this looks like a great hire. Is there any further discussion from anybody? Okay, doesn't look like it. Do I have a motion?
Sure, I will move approval of the executive director's recommendation for Felicia Gray to be advanced to step 5.
I'll second.
Great, I agree. So we're all aye. Let's move on to item B, 8B, which is a reclass. It looks like one of two that are very similar. So this first one is for, now I'm going to look at the name just to make sure I get it right.
Maura Blanco.
And Maura, right.
Mhm, mhm.
Secretary, would you please?
Of course, thank you. I normally don't talk about two employees at the same time, but they, as Chairperson Goldstein noted, they are very similar. And what we're looking at, and I've been working on this particular reclassification, I believe, since June or May. So it's been very thorough. Mildred participated, and the union's help was really important in giving me more of a global perspective. But what I noted right away was that the district needs at the Children's Center are such that they're much more complicated after COVID. So that's one aspect of it. The need that Maria Cariello needs at the site is also extremely complicated. The vendor relationships are complicated. So when you're talking about these positions and how they're supporting the children's centers, they are the front person. They are the person who is contacting the vendors, the relationships with the vendors. They work with Bananas on the enrollment, and they're doing multiple tasks. And it's not just the amount of work. The thing that stuck out for me was the level of sophistication of the work. In looking and doing the analysis and what classes, both Delia and Maura and the union, Mildred, were suggesting school admin too. So that is definitely where my focus was. But to be thorough, I looked at the school admin 1, I looked at the admin 2s and the other classes. What you're seeing is one person who's supporting, who's doing everything. And I just did a desk audit at a high school where there's a larger umbrella of support, if you will, because but what you're seeing is the disparity between the Children's Center in terms of services and what they need to provide Maria versus what they would need to provide for Juan at the high school. They're not that far apart.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really symptomatic. We were talking about the class and comp earlier. This is really what we're seeing is this particular type of need at the site, or sites in this case, hasn't really been addressed. there definitely is more than a 2-year accretion of duties. I think my only reservation, and this isn't so much about Maura and Delia in particular, but the fact that Maria has had to have this need, and the employees have been fulfilling that need for Maria and the children's centers. It's been going on a lot longer than 2 years. So, you know, we're going to need to address this. I'm recommending the reclassification for both employees. Clearly, obviously, that's not a question. But one of the things that I'm going to be asking the class and comp group is to look at all the children's centers, and look at the needs that the district is providing the students and the kids, and Delia and Maura doing double, triple, quadruple duty. If you were the last thing I'll say is, if Maura and Delia left today and we did not make this a school admin 2 position, the person going into the old admin ECE position would not have the skills on day one to provide Maria and the children's centers the what they need to succeed and move forward. So, you know, one of the things to consider is whether the ECE position should exist moving forward too. And I guess we'll address that at another time. But I definitely, you'll notice the documentation is very thorough, more thorough than most that you've seen. Yeah, I recommend for both Delia and Maura to go from the admin assistant ECE to the school administrative assistant 2. Thank
Can
you.
I ask you actually to speak to something else that is in your write-up? And, you know,
Sure.
for each of these candidates, you absolutely, you know, address, you know, the individual differences, you know, duties above and beyond. On the second page in your recommendation, you've got similar language, and I'd like you to speak a little more to this, you know, for the commission. And I want to,
Sure.
I think I know what you're saying, but I want to make sure the others do as well. So there are 4 people in this role. And what you say in the second to last paragraph is that current employees will remain in the classification to not be affected negatively should the determination be made after the class and comp study. Can you help us understand?
Well, that I'm trying to provide, you know, foresight. I want it in the public record that this is not meant to take anyone's job away, nor to have a negative impact on the other 2 employees. That is not the desired effect, because in essence, we have 2 of the 4 employees who are performing all these duties, and they are slightly different, but there is a level of sophistication that the ECE job walking in the door would not be able to do. That said, you know, I wanted to kind of set the record straight in a public hearing that we have to question whether the ECE position as it is, and this is for the other 2 employees who by the way, did not submit documentation, but it doesn't mean that the need isn't still there. It probably is, and I'm almost assuredly it is. So what I'm trying to say here, Chairperson, is by no means am I trying to suggest that we negatively impact the other 2 employees, because that's not at all the desired effect of this recommendation. But I wanted it to be said that it may, not shall, but may get there, and it may have to be addressed at some point, because of the district need, not just the individual employee need.
Thank you. If you all don't mind, just on the heels of Secretary Castillo's comments, I'd like to make some comments, and then I'll open it back to the other commissioners, because some of this is reminiscent of some of what went on the last time Berkeley Unified did a class and comp study, which was 2012. And the brief history is the study was done in 2012. It was still being implemented when I came on the commission in 2016, the very last vestiges of it. So I wasn't involved in that study. There are still big holes in my knowledge about that study. However, a couple things were clear. One thing that happened during that study was there is reevaluation of certain positions, and there was a consolidation of those positions. This was, Brian, you're kind of from that area. You're going to have to help me, because there were school administrative assistants, there were school secretaries, there were some job classes that we don't have today that were compressed. And my recollection of all this is that it was not a good call. Let's put it that way from the study. We had a bunch of subsequent actions at the commission. People who came from sort of organizations like the ECE, where you are kind of, the front person, you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with students, you're dealing with agencies, you're dealing with reporting. You just have this wide breadth of stuff. In the last case, the Berkeley BTA was the entity that came forward, and the individual who held the job there, sort of asking the question like, gee, my work is sophisticated as anything at the high school, why is my position not equivalent? So I think we're sort of seeing here the shot over the bow, that once we get our class and comp study off the ground, this is going to be an area we're going to want to pay close attention to. And I know Secretary Castillo will, in his role, do that. But this is clearly going to be one of those areas, because there is always a natural tension, on the part of a district. They want to pay fairly, and they don't want the class and comp study to bankrupt them. And sometimes the way that is resolved is, makes better sense, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. So I think I have seen one round where the resolution was not a good resolution, and I think probably caused more problems than it solved. My hope is this time, as we see these things emerge, and we are absolutely going to see them emerge, and you can probably guess where we're going to see them emerge, that we really ride those issues hard and make sure that we're part of the discussion all the way through. So that we don't find ourselves on the back end with, a bunch of really unhappy employees in job classes that, perhaps weren't well understood or were consolidated as a matter of convenience. So that may or may not make sense, but anybody who lived through the last one probably understands what I'm describing here. So with that, let me throw it open to other commissioner questions.
Well, thank you, Heidi. Your first question was actually one that I had, and thank you, Charlie, for explaining that. I guess my other question to you is the way that you are trying to, the way that we're trying to move these two positions. Are you trying to do it in the way that you foresee those positions becoming? Or is this kind of a stopgap until, as Heidi says, we do the classification, compensation, and then we kind of determine what ultimately this will look like?
Well, I have to think about that, but I guess my in the moment answer would be it's maybe a little bit of both, because Mildred and I did encourage the other two employees to submit documentation. They didn't, and I think initially the union and I were partnering to kind of address it, city like district wide, but that fell apart a little bit, and we didn't want to hold two of the four back. So that's why we moved forward. So in some ways, in that regard, it's probably a stopgap. But moving forward, now that we are here, I'll probably have another conversation with Mildred and the union, and they're going to be part of our committees with the comp study anyway. So they're going to definitely have a voice on how this evolves moving forward, and that's the plan. Hopefully it's not a stopgap, and that's where it ends. Hopefully it's a stopgap with a future for the new classification and how it serves the district.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roeder, comments, questions?
Well, I guess as I've done in the past, I see, and perhaps you have seen it too, that Mildred has joined us on behalf of BCCE. And before making comments, I for one would like to reserve that time and hear what Mildred wanted to say about this subject.
Mildred, do you have comments?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all for considering and allowing me to speak. Thank you, Commissioner Rhoda, for allowing me to speak. I appreciate the work that that Secretary Castillo did on this reclass, and he's correct in stating that we really worked hard with the whole classification, because there are 4 people in this current classification as school admin ECE. And 2 of the people did, 2 of the employees did submit their reclass, and the other 2, I don't know what's going on. I don't know, why they haven't submitted their paperwork. My only issue is the fact that it is one classification. And then when you do look at the job class in itself, it's like the work is being done at each of the schools. So it's Hopkins, it's Franklin, it's King, Hopkins, Franklin, King, and then Bears. And those are all the school ECE. So we were looking at, how many classes is at each school. Franklin is the largest school. This reclass actually should have been done a long time for these members, because when you do really dive into their duties, it's not at the level that their job description currently states. I mean, so I appreciate Secretary Castillo really digging in, and I'm grateful that he allowed me to be present in the process to hear the questions and how he, asked the questions to each of the 2 that did submit their paperwork, and I really appreciate that. My only concern is having all 4 reclass to the same thing and not just the 2 out of the 4, even though the other 2 did not submit their paperwork. But then I do understand what Secretary Castillo said, is that, each person have to do their reclass individually, because at the beginning we were looking at doing it together as one reclass. Just looking at the job description in the whole, looking at each, everybody's duties, seeing the similarities and so forth, and just reclassing it at that. But then, I think it's in the mirror rules, if I'm not mistaken, Secretary Castillo, you can correct me, it says that each reclass has to be done individually. But I will hope the commission will look at the fact that we don't want to just say just these 2 and not the other 2 individuals, when it's just one clear title, basically, for all 4 of the child cares, or what is ECE,
The children's centers.
the children's centers. But what is the name? It's ECE.
Early childhood education.
Early childhood education. I just think that it would just be best to do all 4 instead of doing the 2, even though I do understand the other 2 did not, do their individual class, their individual reclass. So, and then also I would like to add that I appreciate Commissioner Heidi bringing out the fact that the last classification study that we had, because yes, I was involved in that, it really messed up the clerical pool in the whole, because what it did was it clumped people together and made people have job descriptions that did not support their actual job, like the school ECE, because they actually, if you will look at the things that they do, is higher than, at some positions at the high school and at other sites, because there's a lot of things they have to get to the state. There's a lot of things that they deal with that you wouldn't even believe that they actually do. So, and I appreciate Castillo, Secretary Castillo, at recognizing that. So the whole clerical pool and the whole putting together the admins, pulling together the school admin ones. I mean, those classifications in the whole is going to be huge to really look at when this classroom comp study happens. Because if you look at a lot of reclasses that has happened, has been in those areas. And actually the district, Samantha, says that she really wants to attack those positions, because with the change in the systems, with escape and everything, it's putting more work on these employees' desk. So we really do need to look at, their positions. So I just wanted to add and appreciate what Secretary Castillo said, and to acknowledge the fact that I think that if we're going to change two, we need to change all four. Thank you.
Well, Miss Mildred,
Yes, sir.
actually, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
So we don't have any idea why these other two have not submitted their paperwork?
I'm not sure. I kind of have a feeling, and I don't want to just say something that may not be true. But again, I met with all four of them several times, and we set a meeting. So because I actually helped them all, with their reclasses and so forth, and looked them over and made sure that we can support Secretary Castillo in the process to make it as easy as possible. So they were encouraged to fill out their paperwork. I don't know if other things, hindered them being able to get it done in a timely manner, being able to get it done where Mata and Delia was able to get theirs done. I'm not sure, but they were asked to do it. But again, me knowing their jobs, because I had the opportunity of going through the process with Mata and Delia and going to each school site and speaking to each person, I see what they're, what it is that they do.
Right.
And it's not a huge, it's not like, I can't honestly say, okay, well, this one does this one does this one, but this one does not do what these other two do.
Right.
That is so that I can't say that. So just because they didn't submit their paperwork, I can fairly say that the classification in a whole at each one of these early childhood education centers do pretty much, the same thing. But Franklin is a larger early childhood center. So, and they do so, and they all support Maria. So with that, Bears may be a little bit different in the way it's ran, but the all three of the early childhood centers do pretty much run the same.
And so I guess my next question is, knowing the history of what has happened in the past, and Frank, maybe you can not Frank, I'm sorry, Charlie, maybe you can speak to this. Is there a way of throwing up warning signs once we get this classification and comp study started, saying, hey, look, let's be mindful of what happened here so we don't find ourselves in this same position? Because it sounds like, that was a bad scene. And I think that, it's not always easy to avoid another bad scene, but you can at least bring up the fact that we know that this has happened. So maybe we need to be a little more sensitive and a little more creative in how we approach this time, so we don't find ourselves there again.
Well, Mildred and Jocelyn have a voice, and they're going to be part of a committee. Right now, it's 4 committees. You have BCCE, you have HR, and then you have a joint, and then you have 21 in HR, and then you have a joint. And then of course, the group, the superintendent's office. I mean, we definitely want to have feedback from there. So, all of the stakeholders are going to have direct access to the class and comp. And, I'll be there if they want me to be. I mean, the thing is when they have their time with their class and comp person, they should just have their time. And Mildred is very knowledgeable. She's going to be able to, state the case and what's going on. And then they'll come back to me and say, this is what we heard from the union. These are our thoughts. And so it'll be a fluid process, but, make no mistake, Mildred is definitely one of the stakeholders in all this. And she, her advocacy and her knowledge is going to, probably move this forward a lot more than I could by myself,
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that she is. I mean, I think that, I guess what I would hope will happen, and I'm confident that will happen, that as she's making that case, she has also got support kind of backing up that case, so that it's not this attitude, oh, well, she said this, but we know that they're just, we don't know. She's stating what needs to happen, and hopefully we can support her in letting them know that we just do not want another situation that we had the last time we did this.
Yeah. I'll only speak to that very quickly. I think the feedback I got from HR, from the union, from employees who submit reclasses, I still have some of those on my desk too. It's never ending, so it's kind of symptomatic of where the district is. But Eric, the new group is bringing forward kind of like a methodology. It's almost like a science, right? They're dispassionate and factual. They provide, they gather the information. They provide information. So they don't have a kind of a stake in the stories or the history. Frankly, to them, they're fairly agnostic in that regard. What they want to know is, hey, if there's work being done, give us some documentation to present it. We'll look at the job and see if it fits. And that, so it's going to be very methodical. And again, I use the word scientific because they're kind of agnostic in all this. They're just providing, at the end of the day, the commission with recommendations after they've gotten feedback and while they're getting feedback from the unions and the stakeholders. So I think what I had heard was that the previous comp study was done by 1 or 2 people. And the feedback, and again, I'm not going to mention who they were because that's bad taste, but I didn't get a lot of positive feedback, and I think it was because it was so personal. I don't see this group doing that. I don't see them on a first name basis or being, they're with me, and I've been dealing with them almost a year now. They're very professional and very methodical and very calculated and deliberate, and they come extremely well regarded, and they're all former principals and teachers, so they understand our world, and they come with their own knowledge and their own experience in that regard. So I'm very confident that it'll be productive.
I noticed Frank had his hand up, but it's really Commissioner Roeder. It's still your floor. You sort of ceded your time. You want to go back and make your comments now?
I would, thank you.
Okay.
So I sort of have a general comment about what you all have been discussing regarding the classification and comp study. But one point that Mildred made, which I'm not entirely sure about, and I went back and looked at our current rules under reclassification, and that's rule 30.300. And 30.300, although it's not 100% explicit about it, it does talk about all positions in a class being reclassified. And I'm pretty sure under the Ed Code that is permissible. And I think we talked about that once. Now, it appears to me that it is the case that although, as Mildred points out, each of these positions sort of run the same way, and each of these early childhood education centers are basically run the same way, there are differences among each of the positions in each of the locations. So that might account for 2 people wanting to apply and 2 people not wanting to apply. There may be another sort of technical reason, and I don't know how long each of these 4 employees has worked at the district or worked in this position, but there is a provision in 30.300.4, which talks about if all of the positions are reclassified, those employees with 3 or more years in that position will be automatically reclassified. But employees with less than 3 years potentially could have a problem. And if there is such an employee, then unfortunately, that employee might have to reapply for the position and compete, probably promotionally, with other employees, or maybe even an open exam. And that may be a position that somebody would not want to be in. So if any of these employees have fewer than 3 years, then that could be a reason. I have no idea whether they have fewer than 3 years. But that could be a reason for not wanting to reclassify all the positions. As far as the comments, I agree. We have to be very cognizant of not being too general about all of these positions and looking at these, especially clerical type administrative positions, very carefully. I totally agree with that. The only thing I would say I would be a little careful about is not to make decisions today about specific reclassifications based on what might happen in a reclassification study in the future. We could be wrong about our predictions. And really a reclassification, as these two employees do, should stand on their own merits today. And if they do, they need to be reclassified. I have found in my experience in life that trying to predict the future can be a very sort of tenuous thing. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mildred, I don't know if that hand up is from before or you
Oh,
have.
I was just gonna, thank you so much. I just wanted to say that you're reading that the 30.300.4 out of the merit rules, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to share that I do know everybody's seniority in this group because again, I appreciate Charlie letting me be really, a part of this whole process. So one of the one out of the 4 will be under the 3, but Marta has the most seniority, then it'll be Margot, then it'll be Delia, and then it'll be Ashley, because those are the 4 people that's in this position. And if I'm not mistaken, and I think Ashley has probably less than 2, or she might have just 2. So I just wanted to always give you guys the information because I appreciate you sharing the information with me.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this discussion, including some of our anxieties, I think, about the upcoming class and comp study. But I agree with Commissioner Roeder. It's hard to predict. We will get to, I hope, have more conversations about what our participation will be in that class and comp study. But it seems to me on the merits of what Secretary Castillo looked at, for the 2 employees who did raise their hand and asked to be reevaluated, we have a pretty, robust body of work to, an evaluation here. So if there are no more comments, I think we're ready to call the question. Any more comments? Okay, so I think that we have discussed both, but want to vote on them independently. So the first one we're voting on is 8B, which is the Mara Blanco reclass. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great, I agree. And then I want to ask if this group wants to talk about any of the differences in the specifics of Delia Lopez Caloca circumstances in terms of reclass, or are we comfortable with the support documentation and sort of, the whole rationale that sits behind it?
They look sufficiently similar to me, so I am comfortable with Secretary Castillo's recommendation.
As am I.
Okay, then do I have a motion for 8C, reclass for Delia Lopez Caloca?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great, I agree. Okay, so we have approved reclassifications for Mara Blanco and Delia Lopez Caloca. Secretary, would you like to talk to us about item D, 8D?
Yes, thank you. Well, one of the first things I encountered when I started working at the school district was that the after-school specialist, whenever issues arose and we tried to call for terms of accountability, The principal, I guess, was technically in charge, but the principals were often not there. That's one aspect of this. I think it's very, very clear that the after-school programs are where they're headed is a more robust program, one that is addressing the needs of after school. And I live in San Francisco, and I can tell you the Berkeley after-school program is pretty robust and pretty sophisticated when you compare them to San Francisco, for instance. So what was needed was someone in between the specialist and the program supervisor. So this is, as you'll notice, it's kind of a long title, but we went back and forth with Lisa and Ruben at the time, and then later with Aaron, and then now even recently with Christy, the site coordinator. That was very, very important to put in there. That is what we're talking about. So it's the program specialist, the site coordinator, and then the program supervisor. So there's now a direct coordination, supervision, programmatic needs are being addressed in real time. Christy's here, so she may speak to other components, learns and bears and other things. But really, I think that this whole process started with Lisa back in, I want to say, May or April. And it was, again, a very fruitful collaboration, because I learned a lot about this program. And it's really just the person in charge there, and really someone who's bringing in. You'll notice the educational requirements are such that we didn't want to not offer opportunities to our specialists who probably may not have the BA, but they may have the 4 years. We wanted to be very inclusive in that regard. But we also have the BA with 2 years, because, you know, someone like Felicia went to school and this is what they studied, and their program coordinator, then they bring that to the table. So it allows for internal promotion, and it also allows for recruitment of someone who's coming in to do it. In terms of salary grades, you'll notice that I worked with our union friends in 21, and we had a long discussion about it. They too have a lot of reservations, just generally, of what the district is paying just everyone in the program and classified. But I wanted to make the job competitive and current with some of the other jobs, and there's an Excel on that in this packet that you can look at. Chairperson Goldstein, you always want me to include those comparisons because I know how helpful they
Thank
can
you.
be. So
Yeah.
so that's there. But it also it's at grade 64 because it's right in between the specialist and Brazil, who's the supervisor of the program, and it's that grade just fits just very nicely in between those two jobs, which is where it should be. We can address later, it's at a later point, all three job descriptions and whether they are as competitive as they can be. But then again, you know, I don't want to, right now we're only talking about this job. And I think that is a good place for it to land. You'll notice that the range is not the highest, but it's not the lowest. I tried to find it as middle in market as I could. But it is literally like in between. 64 is exactly in between. It takes the high end of the specialist and the very low end to middle end of the supervisor. So it fits there pretty well. I mean, lastly, I think the board, you know, already approved, as we all know, they approved the essential functions, the duties. Obviously, at that point, commission is charged with the minimum qualifications and the salary grade. And, you know, one of the things that Aaron was very helpful in advising me on was to not be restrictive with the driver's license, because some people have a driver's license and they don't have a car. Some people, you know, just take public transportation. Some people ride bikes. So, you know, little things like that. There were slight tweaks in terms of the essential functions, in terms of the minimum qualifications. So we really tried to make it as inclusive as we could without taking anything away from what the board had already approved in terms of the essential job duties. So I leave it to the commission if they have any questions, but I hope that all the attachments and my description offers kind of insight into why I think this is an important position.
Thank you. So I don't think Christy has been to our meetings before, so welcome. And I'll explain that generally what I do is I ask commissioners for comments first, and then I go to comments from the public. So I saw your hand up and totally expect you to have comments, and we'll just ask for you to be patient. We go to the commissioners first because sometimes they pose questions that someone knowledgeable may want to answer. So I'll start with the commissioners and see if anybody has comments or questions. Commissioner Roeder, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation, Executive Director Castillo. Could you, Executive Director, please walk us through a little bit the two spreadsheets that you do have as part of the agenda, and how best to read them? I think you have one that compares Berkeley with some other both municipalities, I think, and also school districts. I understand that one. I think I know how to read it. One question about it, and I guess maybe a comment, is my question is when the two columns that say from, and it says in parentheses annual gross, to, are those only looking at salary, or are those looking at total compensation? And I say that because in my many years when I was on the personnel board for the city of Berkeley, and we were handling these kinds of salary placements, we were presented with total compensation, because clearly when you're dealing with whether it's health insurance or contributions towards pensions and things like that, that does, the unions in their negotiations make trade-offs. And so to compare apples to apples, I think it would be useful, not for this, I don't really think it's necessary, but if my fellow commissioners agree, maybe in the future to have total compensation, and you could use as a model what the city of Berkeley does. And I'm sure the personnel director would be happy to talk to you about that. And then, yeah, if you can just help with how this other spread, I'm not sure about ranges 53, 64, and 69, and what exactly those encompass and how to read that spreadsheet.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Roeder. No, this is only the annual salary. But it's not to say that moving forward, I can do a full cost. Usually on average, it's between 27 and 38% on average compounded on the salary in terms of cost. But this only included what the salary range was. In regards to the second sheet, and I'm trying to turn it, but I thought that this was useful because you have just the job titles and then the ranges. And this is what I was doing. When I looked at the ranges from 53 to 72, I'm looking at job title, job function, and then where, because this person's a coordinator, where they should be. And then I'm comparing this salary grade sheet to the Excel sheet that is preceding it. So I'm doing several things at the same time. I'm looking at what our salary grades are. I'm looking at what the titles are on the Excel list from the other school districts and municipalities. And then that combined with the duties, the title, and then internally, the duties and titles of the other jobs. That I thought it was important to give you a whole picture of how this recommendation is made. So the document on the right is our own internal, attachment D is our own internal salary ranges for 21. And then the other sheet that only has the annual salaries is more of a comparative in terms of like market and comparative roles.
So from an internal comparison, it's consistent. To external, it may not be, but internal, it is consistent.
Yes, although, you know, what we're doing is an educated approximation, right? When we're doing the comparisons on the Excel, so that it's based somewhere in the market. But yes, that's correct.
And is Local 21 in agreement with this salary range?
They are, and I checked and double checked and triple checked. Even as recent as this morning, I called Angela, and they are in agreement with range 64.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davis, questions?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Oop, he froze up. No,
No,
you-
no.
you're- oh, okay, all right, you don't
No,
have
no,
anything.
no,
Okay.
no,
No,
I
I'm
don't
just,
You were just holding
I'm just-
very still. Okay, okay. Got it.
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, okay. Maybe I'll make a few comments and then I think Christy, you probably still have some things you'd like to share. So, okay. So, you know, this one has been a long time in coming. And this one I take very seriously because our family actually had a very personal experience that might have been really different if we had had this way back when. My younger daughter, who graduated from BUSD in 2019, in 2014 at King, was a victim of sexual battery, exactly because there was no supervision in the after-school program. And this is what first brought my awareness to the need for this. So, you know, fast forward 8 years, I'm glad we're addressing it. Now is better than never. What I want to highlight here, that I really don't see explicit in the job description, and probably we cannot really squeeze into the MQs, but I'm open to good ideas. This position needs to understand several district processes with respect to safety, with respect to Title IX, with respect to student discipline processes. It really needs to be hooked in there for all those reasons. And I'm not sure how to make sure that it gets those ties. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy for comments and possibly thoughts on that.
Thank you. I will try to be brief. I know we've had a full agenda already. Thank you for welcoming me to the commission. This is my second time coming. I'm new to BUSD and happy to learn about all of your processes. And I briefly want to comment about this wonderful opportunity for some of our most dedicated employees. This is an opportunity to recognize some amazing leaders who have very strong dedication to serving our students. In on-site conversations, because I meet with all of the LEARNs, what they're currently called specialists on their school sites, some folks are hearing about this and they're very excited. Some who've been here up to 20 years, and they feel like this is very much a course correction for the reasons that Mr. Castillo was mentioning around supervision, but also around, I guess I'll say, status. They're seeing it as a time for them to be able to be more recognized as leaders. And sometimes, though probably not anyone's intent, the after school programs can be sometimes othered or, you know, put in another space. So I think that they are very excited about this opportunity to apply for this. And to what you're saying around, I did too notice the missing piece around having those skills. One of the things that I've already been talking to Brazil McIntyre, who's a supervisor who works directly over LEARNs, and also to a couple of the very experienced specialists, is that currently, the way it stands, they are not a part of those trainings. There's mandatory trainings, which you know, they can have a certain, you know, level of value. Some people might devalue them because it's something you're sitting and doing by yourself. However, they do provide at least a baseline of information in relation to some of these crucial items in relation to Title IX and some of the safety processes. And my understanding is that with this shift in role, they would be a part of that group. So it's not like they're trying to figure things out on their own or getting information secondhand. They would be able to be a part of this. And this question actually came up today in our community of practice. They asked, if this goes forward, could it be that they do these as a part of their community of practice? So they're engaging in these professional developments, not just sitting on their own and kind of making sense of it, but together and pausing it and asking questions and, you know, really working on it collaboratively. And so it's interesting that you brought that up because it came up just this morning. So that was the comment I wanted to add and the response I have to the question that you surfaced.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Secretary, do you have thoughts with respect to the MQs about how we make that a little more concrete? I agree. Community of practice is good. The very base training at BUSD, I think probably still is just the 1 hour sexual harassment and mandatory reporting.
Yeah.
Training. And there are really dimensions of safety planning and connections to other offices at BUSD that this position needs. So I'm looking for some guidance from you about how we might be able to do that.
Well, I think the first thing is the kind of logistical or mechanical fix, which is what I can do is, and I don't want to delay the process, obviously, but what we can do is I've written down Title IX and some of the training. I can add those and send them to the commission for approval to make those changes. The other thing I can speak to is that we do have Paula Phillips, who's our district-wide training coordinator, and we can work with Christy to make sure that that's included as part of the hiring package. You know, I remember when I got hired, I think I did something like 13 hours of, you know, online training. So if it's really, really important to have it in those MQs, then I would suggest that we can either make the changes and send them and then have another vote on the 20th, or we can suggest making sure that these folks are trained. And I have no doubt that Christy and Paula can kind of come up with a sufficient training program. But I know Christy and the district really want to get moving on the exam, and you know, if it's approved tonight, then on Monday and the week, you know, next week, we're getting in with Christy to get this exam done and get the recruitment going. So again, but of course, I don't want to not acknowledge your concern, Chairperson. I'm just trying to offer ideas here.
No,
because if that's the only
appreciate
tweak,
that.
you know, yeah.
You know, I'll be honest, and you know, I realize this was not on Christie's watch. This was not on the watch of many people who are there. But these are weak links at Berkeley Unified. So my preference would be that we actually modify the MQs to reflect this and revisit it on the 20th. You know, we've gone 8 years. I think we can go another 2 weeks.
Understood.
I don't know how the others feel.
I agree.
Commissioner Roeder, go ahead, please.
Well, I don't have a problem delaying this by a few weeks, Chairperson Goldstein. I do notice, though, that under the abilities as currently written, the very first bullet is the ability to assure the program provides a safe and healthy environment for participants. So I do think that that safe and healthy environment definitely includes things such as, sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, bullying, and all of the things that are encompassed by that concept. And since that's reflected as a required ability, I would say that during the screening process, especially during the testing process, that specific questions could be posed to the applicants having to do with their experience with respect to, making sure that the environment is safe in all respects in the after-school program. But with that said, I'm not going to oppose delaying it. I would have a little bit, I don't know how. I mean, this is something perhaps you, Chairperson, and Secretary Castillo would need to put your heads together about, is we don't want to say something so specific about a minimum qualification in Title IX, in particular for a position such as this, because it seems to me we might be rejecting very qualified applicants who just haven't had that very specific experience, but at the same time, experience in dealing with a safe and inclusive environment certainly does make sense as a minimum qualification.
I'm certainly glad to see that ability there. I think it is not nearly specific enough. And I don't know, for purposes of minimum quals, I'll give you some examples of the more explicit kinds of things I think this role needs. If this role is coordinating folks at different sites, the folks at the different sites, this is not only, let's meet the ratio of adult to students, and let's make sure the people who are running whatever programs actually show up, or we get subs, or we do whatever. The students who come to after school are going to be an interesting mix. Some of them are going to have discipline histories and records. Some of them are going to be very possibly, certainly at the middle school level, on safety plans where they're not supposed to be together because there's a history of problems. So when I talk about specific connections to Title IX and safety planning, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. And, it's unfortunate, but what we need to make sure is that whoever is in these roles not only gets training, BUSD processes, and gets connected through a community of practice to these other things, but that they're aware that there is such a thing as safety planning, that maybe they have some experience doing this, that maybe they have some experience with alternative dispute resolution, because the lower level won't have that experience. 20% of the issues drink up 80% of the time, right? 20-80 rule. And I expect that would be the case here. So, I hope this gives you a sense of sort of the very explicit kinds of things that I am interested in making sure someone who takes this role has some experience in. I don't want the minimum quals to be so exclusionary that we can't get anyone, but someone who doesn't understand this is not going to be able to execute in this role adequately.
One question, are we expecting a coordinator, and maybe this is a question for Christy, are we expecting a coordinator at each site?
Excellent clarifying question. The way the intent is that they will be at one site, and we are highly encouraging the current specialists who are at each site to apply for those positions. So it will be one per site, and we're hoping it will be the person who is sitting currently in the role.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have a thought about, so in terms of sitting currently in the role, if we were to make the minimum qualifications include experience with safety and things like that, it sort of sounds like that's that would cover the people that you're thinking about? Is
I think,
is that accurate?
yeah, I think if it's related to safety and meeting student safety needs, yes. If it's specifically about Title IX, they have not, as I mentioned prior, been allowed to be in the district Title IX trainings. So they have their, I do worry that it might preclude some of our folks who are very qualified in many ways and have the heart to be able to learn those skills to not be able to be in the role.
My only suggestion then is that you might want to work with our chairperson and with our executive director in formulating minimum qualifications that would be satisfactory to our chairperson, but also work to be able to promote the people who deserve being promoted.
I'm just making a note. Sometimes I think folks can focus on Title IX, and my intent is not to say that these folks need Title IX expertise. Title IX is one level in standard. There's a state standard about, safe environment or, what constitutes harassment. What we want to make sure really is that these are people who understand what is safety planning and what are alternative dispute resolution techniques aside from discipline, which, would expel or suspend somebody from the program. And that's a no-no in the after school. These are kids who don't have anywhere else to go. So we need people who understand how to do these things so that they can be inclusive. But, promoting inclusiveness versus a little more specific knowledge, I think would benefit us here. And I'm happy to have a separate call, if we need to hammer out a little bit of language. But, these really two things are, safety planning and ADR in my mind. I see Mildred has her hand up. Mildred, do you want to speak on this?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I just have a couple of clarifying questions for Christy. Will this position be a lead over the current after-school program specialist?
This will be in place of it. So the idea is that this coordinator position will take the place of the specialist position and be in supervision of the instructional technicians. And I don't know how far in the weeds you would like me to get, but the idea is not that we are posting this openly and they are all of a sudden out of a job. The idea is that they are encouraged to apply. And then if down the road, when they retire, then we would recruit for this new coordinator position. It's not pushing anyone out of a role. It's trying to support them to come up to the new role.
So I understand that we will eventually, or the eventually wean out the current after-school program specialists, correct? But I think there's like 12 after-school program specialists, 9 to 12 after-school program specialists currently. And then when you hire for this new position, then they will be over so you're at each site, because I heard you say there's going to be this position at each site, correct?
Yes.
And then there are after-school program specialists at most of these sites. So I think there may be 1 or 2 vacancies presently, correct?
Yes.
So as of right now, once the testing starts and so forth, it'll be a after-school program specialist plus this current position at the site.
No. So the idea, I'm sorry, I'm going to need to make a correction. The idea is not that it would be the specialist and the coordinator. The idea is that we're supporting the specialists who really are holding a lot of the responsibility for the program to become the coordinator. And if for some reason, for example, I was a specialist and I did not choose to apply for whatever reason, it would not be that we're also hiring a coordinator in that role. Things would just stay as they are. That person would stay a specialist if they choose not to apply, and the current reporting structures would remain, where the instructional technicians on the site would report to the site principal, and the specialist would be working in support of the program, but not technically the administrator. I hope that made sense. Let me know if it didn't.
I'm a little confused, because I know we were talking about this current position before it got this far, before it even had gone to the board. The union had the opportunity to look at it, because I know that this will be a local 21 position. But with it being a local 21 position or a supervisor position or a lead position, they're not supervising a certain number of people.
They would
So,
be supervising the instructional technicians, the ones who are on site with them.
which is maybe 2 people per site.
No, it depends on the site. So when we're at full capacity, it could be up to 12 people at some of our bigger programs. The minimum would be 6 to 7.
So again, that's a concern because we don't have, looking at the vacancy list in the vacancy report, we don't have that currently at each one of the sites because we're so behind, we need people actually.
Yes.
So I'm just a little confused on how this particular position is going to work. And will Brazil be over this current, I do think Brazil needs to support, right? Because I
Yes.
know that she ends up at, a lot of the sites and so forth. I'm confused as how.
No, I
this
understand. It is
works
confusing. It's not
because
simple.
not
So
making-
Brazil
it's
and
not going
I,
to What was said, prior,
Yeah.
the reason why the union, was kind of agreeing to it, but it's not adding up.
so Brazil and I are both in support and supervision of LEARNs. I alone am in support and supervision of BEARS. And so
Right?
Brazil and I work on that together. And so the idea is that the reporting structure would be that these coordinators, Brazil and I, would continue as we do now, where we are separating whom we are supervising. She and I are supervising them. Usually we tie it up because I'm also supervising BEARS to where both programs are there, just because I'm there more. And then the site coordinators, when we hire them into those roles, they would be the supervisors of the instructional technicians, the ones who are directly working with the classes of students. And that would be a shift from prior where the principals were their supervisor when they weren't necessarily there at the times when the program was in place.
So if there's not going to be a after-school program specialist at each site, and you're hoping that the after-school program specialists apply for this position, and what if they, they don't get it, or maybe they don't want the position? I'm still wondering how that's going to work. Because right now you currently have said that it was going to be this, what's the name of this position again? So I could just say.
Coordinator.
After-school coordinator?
School program site coordinator.
After-school program site coordinator. So the after-school program site coordinator, I know you guys are again trying to wean out the after-school program specialist. So a current after-school program specialist, let's just say they leave, they retire, whatever, then that position will not be replaced. It will be replaced with the after-school program coordinator.
Correct.
But the goal is to have an after-school program coordinator at each school site, but we have after-school program specialists at each school site. So if we go ahead with this position, then again, I'm confused as to if the after-school program coordinator, are they going to be over the after-school program specialist and so forth, because there are currently after-school program specialists at most sites, with the exception of, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, you can correct me, maybe one or two positions.
Got it. So the idea is that there would never be a school site where there is both a coordinator and a specialist. The coordinator role is replacing the specialist role, and our hope is we're supporting all of the specialists to be able to apply in, test, and be in these roles. Once again, if there is a case where they do test or for whatever reason, it does not work out for their application to move forward as a coordinator, they will hold rights to that school. They will still function as a specialist. We will just be in this slightly dysfunctional situation of the principal still supervising the instructional technicians.
I see. Yeah, it still doesn't, I just see a lot of problems happening because it's not really smooth or clear, because again, we still have many after-school program specialists. I understand the concept was because I understand that after-school program specialists, and then with the ITs and the IAs, being like supervised by an after-school program specialist. But I just see a lot of problems because again, we still have a lot of schools that have after-school program specialists, so we can't place after-school site coordinator at each site when again, majority of the schools have that. And I think sometimes, we actually need to look at what's most important is getting ITs and IAs at these school sites. And then I can understand maybe looking at this position to support if need be. I'm just a little confused. That's just all. I just wanted some clarified questions. I appreciate the time. And thank you, Christy, for answering my questions. Thank you so much.
You bet. If I can take a run at it, just to make sure I'm understanding it, because I think I am. This is really an organizational shift of staff that are currently fragmented to 2 reporting structures to put them all under 1 reporting structure. Do I understand that right? Okay. So today, because the after-school program specialists report up to Christy, and is it Brazil? Is that
Correct.
the person's name? But the ITs report up to the site supervisor. There's a disconnect in the coordination.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but they actually report to the principals. So the
Right,
instructors
yeah, I'm
give
sorry,
them-
I said site coordinator, I meant site administrator,
Mhm.
sorry,
Yes.
site administrator, the principal, yes. What this is seeking to do is run both the, what are currently the specialists, possibly promoted to site coordinators, and the ITs in a chain of command down from Brazil and Christie, site coordinator, instructional technicians. So it's 1 reporting chain, and the principal is out of it, which I think is probably what the principals want.
There was clapping in the principal meeting when I talked
Yeah,
about
yeah,
potential
no,
change.
I bet there is, right? They, this is
That
not
makes
their
sense.
first priority.
That makes sense.
So what I think I also hear is that if no one at a site, currently who is serving as a specialist wants to apply for the site coordinator, you're going to use attrition. You're going to wait till they leave before you find someone who can take that role.
That is correct.
So
Yes.
I don't think I'm hearing anyone's going to be forced out. I think this is really about just changing the reporting structure for the better, in my opinion.
And Heidi, can I also just add to that too? If a specialist applies for but does not, I guess, meet the qualifications, they will still stay in that role until they retire or decide to leave, and then you would bring someone in there. So again, no one would lose their position in that case.
And we did an informal survey of the folks in the roles, and they all meet the minimum qualification, and there's no one who's not very excited about the opportunity.
Right. And those minimum quals, I understand, that I am asking for 2 additional minimum quals that, may require some training. And, part of the way we have done this before, we certainly do it with the pool maintenance people. We've done it with some of the campus security folks. Not everybody walks in necessarily with all the minimum quals, and what it means is BUSD is stepping up to give them the training in those areas. The pool maintenance people need all kinds of interesting certifications in chemistry and, pool maintenance and what have you, and very few people walk in actually with that background. So by establishing these minimum quals, really what we're establishing is that the district will agree to be on the hook to get these people trained, clearly and effectively in those things in a more specific way than the bullet that we talked about before, which is a general representation, but not specific enough in my mind.
I have an additional question
Sure.
or comment. So I think I understand the concept, and I think that Vice Chairperson Zenner Davis explained it, very well. My only question is sort of kind of a little bit of a procedural or functional one, which we don't have to answer right now, but it's one that maybe our executive director and Brian will have to look at, is how do we actually do the recruitment for this? In other words, I'm sort of hearing that it might be a site-by-site recruitment rather than a recruitment for the classification as a whole. Which I guess is fine. But how do we work it if we do a recruitment at a certain site and for whatever reason, the current specialist either doesn't apply or does not score well on the test, and scores below the third rank compared to other people who have applied. Now we've got a potential eligibility list that we're creating. However, we're not going to hire from that eligibility list because we're not going to hire anybody. The specialist is going to remain on the job. Maybe that's fine, but I don't really know. I kind of scratch my head about it. So again, not so much a question to be answered right now necessarily, but one perhaps to be thought about by Charlie and Brian.
Good point. Good point.
Well, I mean, the short answer, Commissioner Roeder, is that we would run an exam program like we do for all of the other positions. It's pretty common for us to say, well, how many vacancies do you anticipate? And where are they? So Christy would say, you know, there's 12 and we have 12 openings. Okay, where are they? Oh, they're here. So we design an exam around that and that need, but the ranking, the process regarding the top three and then going down, all of that would remain the same. I don't know that I have to look at the rules, but I don't want to set a precedent of doing everything, an exam that's specific site-based exams. One, we don't have the resources. Two, I don't want to set a precedent because we treat the exam process with vacancies, but we treat it as an exam that we're running for the district need. So, and we always think of the district needs this rather than a specific site. So I don't want to create work. I don't want to set precedent. I don't want to violate a rule. Maybe there is one. I don't know, because I'd have to look at it. But as the executive director, I definitely don't want to create a new process for this position. And in full disclosure, like I didn't walk this whole process through. What my understanding from talking to Lisa, again, we've been talking for a long time, that there needed to be a site coordinator. And I definitely knew that we wanted to encourage the specialist to apply. But the elimination of the job through attrition was not, that's a component that I wasn't aware of, but that's neither here or there. In terms of the position, I think that it's pretty clear, Chairperson, that I don't know if there's a precedent for retracting a recommendation, but obviously I think that you have some things that you'd like to see in this job. I think that I have to circle back with Christy and Lisa and try to fine tune it. And then
Thank you, Christy.
get back to you. Oh, thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and then Brian.
Oh, I just had a comment about the logistical side of recruiting for these new positions, if I may. I had initially, I had thought that this may require 2 recruitments. The first being a promotional only recruitment, where we would encourage the existing specialists to apply and test and hopefully become eligible for what would appear to be, a series of vacant coordinator positions. I'm not sure how that would work as far as a specialist who may find another site more desirable. If they rank number 1 on the list, would they have their pick of the litter per se? And then the second recruitment would be in an open and promotional recruitment where you would invite the public to compete as well to fill the remaining coordinator positions that were not occupied by specialists after they'd already been given an opportunity prior to the public being invited. But it would seem that based on what I've heard just recently, that either it's going to be a position awarded to the specialist or it's not going to be a position at all, which is an alien concept to me. And I'll leave that to those of you who control that stuff to figure out. But Anyway, that was my thought.
I sort of had an interesting thought on this. And I think part of what I was riffing off of was Christie's comment that she believed that certainly for the existing MQs, that she thought the current staff, was ready to go and qualified, which is what we find out from an exam. What it made me think of is that we have from time to time been asked, what does the commission do to help people prepare for exams? And this might be an opportunity for us to be able to provide some resource links about what do you need to do to prepare for this exam. And some of this is as simple as, if you don't know our school district's, Title IX and, policies around harassment, if you don't know our policies around discipline, you better read them, right? There are other external references that talk about what is ADR. So, we're not saying you need experience running an ADR program, but, you're gonna, for purposes of the exam, need to understand what ADR is and how it works, right? May come up in your circumstances. What is safety planning? So this would be a good opportunity for us as a commission to have a resource sheet that for people who are interested in applying, and want to score well, to prepare. I see Frank has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to comment on this. I was just trying to run some scenarios through my head. And one that keeps popping up is, I don't hear a timeline on when the program specialist would have to make a decision. And that worries me because I could see this happening where you might have 2 or 3 people who just don't want to be in that supervisor role. They want to stay as a specialist. And now they're going to be forced to just adhere to what everybody else is doing. So they're going to be doing the job as a supervisor regardless. And I think that will be pushed on them. I'm just looking at what happens throughout the district. That will be pushed on them, and then they'll end up doing the job anyway, even though they don't want that job. And I think that's just going to be a little messy. And that's just what's running through my head. I can see that happening very clearly. They might be qualified to do the job, but for whatever reason, they don't want to do the job. They don't want that position, not the job, but the position. And so what happens then? Are they just going to be forced to be a supervisor and get paid as a specialist? Or are they going to get kicked out of that position and then the supervisor will replace them?
Well, no,
those are
from what I
issues.
understand, it sounds like that the system that will remain the way that it is that they wouldn't be called upon to all of a sudden be supervisor. The supervisor would remain the principal, regardless how that principal feels about having to do that. But I think, to your point, Frank, it does speak to what I commented on during reports, that at that point there needs to be someone making sure that just because this school's specialist decided that they did not want to be a coordinator, that somehow the principal is not kind of in running that and kind of dumping that responsibility on them anyway. So I think that is something to be, just as we see how people get out of classification, I could see something like that happening as well. So I just think that just means that there needs to be some level of some way for either Brazil or Christie to make sure that that's not happening in those cases where the specialist has chosen to remain a specialist.
Can I just comment on that real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
So as we all know, these positions, the coordinator, higher ups, people come and go all the time. So I believe that the intent is good, but down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road, we don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm just have the fear that they will be forced to do the job regardless, and they might be stuck at a lower pay if there's no guidelines or any timeline, or I don't know. I'm just saying it will probably most likely happen. That's just my fear.
I imagine that, part of the way out of the gate this thing will work is that Christie and Brazil will, their guidance on how many vacancies do they have will probably be pretty well informed by their understanding of who is interested in progressing, right? And, Brian, Secretary Castillo, maybe you guys can help me understand how the position requisition comes in here, but it seems to me that under this kind of arrangement, the requisition is going to come from Christie and Brazil, not from the site administrator. Is that right?
That's correct. And Chairperson, I can use an example, a recent example. You all may remember that we created the informational instructional technician. And that the creation of that was because we had, it's slightly different, but they were at all the sites. And, so what we did in that case is we went right to win and said, how many positions, how many sites? And then we go through the process. I think this would be similar. We would go to, in this case, Christie. How many, we don't assume anything. We want, so they would have to send us a requisition for each of those sites.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is what is going to determine right out of the gate. What I don't think I heard from her is that, I guess most of this is at the elementary sites, but there are also these programs at the middle schools, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, we could have
yes. 13
elementary and 3 middles, we got 16 sites. We're probably not going to do all 16 sites at once. And, if I were designing this, I'd do it in a metered fashion for a lot of reasons, right?
Right. And, Chairperson, the funding is not our purview, but, if you were to price out this job and multiply it times 12, it's roughly $1.4 million. Does the district
not that you didn't do the math, right?
right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
okay. Of course I did the math, but it did kind of cross my mind, like, okay, so how many coordinators are we looking at? And then tonight I heard Christie's answer, which was attrition. So, maybe this does require more discussion, Chairperson, and maybe we table this at least until the 20th. And on Monday, I'll start a conversation with, I think I need to bring in Samantha because of the attrition component. When I drafted the position, I had specialists and IT and everyone at the site in mind as a coordinator. And I think it would be fine if it's only the ITs that this person would be supervising. But I've heard a lot tonight that frankly gives me some pause, and maybe I need to circle back with the district. And your concerns, of course, are important as well. So there's still some things here that we probably need to address before we bring it back to you, Commissioner Roeder.
Yeah, through the chair, I agree now that perhaps both for the reasons that Chairperson Goldstein raised and also these kind of recruitment issues and eligibility list issues, because Christie's not with us right now, but at the meeting, but I think as a personnel commission, we have to make it clear, we can't guarantee anybody a job. We can't guarantee that this is going to be, a promotional recruitment, as Brian said. And, who knows who in the district may apply for this position. As I understand it, as far as the exam, like the oral exam panels are concerned, it can't include the supervisors. So potential supervisors. So it's not going to be Christie and Brazil who are going to be doing the oral evaluations. It's going to be other people in the district or maybe even outside the district. I don't know. So we can't guarantee a job to the incumbent specialists right now, they probably have, the best experience, the best abilities, and probably many of them, would score really high on the exam. But it's not a given. So I think it's something, you're absolutely right, that probably needs to be discussed a little bit with Christy. And, it sounds like Christy is the person who's handling this as to how this recruitment will take place.
Hey, Frank, I don't know if your hand is up fresh or from before.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what Izzy just said. We I agree. We can't guarantee anything. That's what the Personnel Commission, they can't guarantee you a job. And, that's the other thing that was running through my head is when they go to hire people, I've seen this over and over again, that, if they don't like somebody, they just won't hire them. They don't have to hire them. They have to do it per the commission rules, but, they don't have to hire you. And I can just see that happening also. So you're going to have some people who they just won't promote. And what's that going to look like if they don't promote them? And now they're stuck in this position, and everything that goes along with it. I won't get into that, but I think that's, again, it'll be messy, and I don't know how you get around that, because I agree, you need to go by the rules. You can't go around the rules, and I think that could be a little messy.
So,
Just a concern.
all right, no, fair enough. Is there anyone else who wants to say anything on this, or are we ready to motion? All right, I think I'd like to make this motion. I'd like to motion that we delay consideration of this pending reconciliation of two things. One is minimum quals that speak more explicitly to particularly safety planning and knowledge of alternative dispute resolution, ADR, as we've talked about today. And the other is to make sure that we've got some alignment on what the expectations are for recruiting, and that we are clear across all our stakeholder groups about how this is going to work. Does that
I
make
second that motion.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. All right, so. All right, and we'll see what we're ready to pick up again on the 20th.
And just to forewarn, it may not be ready by the 20th.
Right,
It may
right.
not be.
So we'll just see, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it may, now like I said, I'm looking at coordinating with HR, Lisa Stupin, Christy, myself, possibly Brian, just so we get a clear sense of what the intent is here. So that it may not be on the 20th. It may have to wait until November or
Okay.
December. We'll see. Yeah.
We've waited 8 years.
Yeah, no,
Wait a
we
little
should
longer.
get it right. Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, that said, let's move on to item 9, which is our second public comment segment. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment? Mildred, go ahead. All right, we got a few people. Okay, Mildred, go ahead.
I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the new BCCE treasurer who's been here with us this evening, which is Shauna Ranowski. Shauna, can you unmute yourself? Shauna? Shauna?
Brian, can you help unmute?
I asked to unmute. I'll do it again.
Mhm.
I think it's Shauna Rabinowitz.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. Okay, well, maybe she walked away, but she is the new BCCE treasurer. And I just wanted you all to have the opportunity to meet her, and I'm glad that she is here.
I'm so sorry. I'm in a different meeting at the same time. I'm having a hard time doing everything at the same time. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you, Mildred, for introducing me. And I don't know what all was said before that. I'm so sorry.
Not to
Sorry.
worry, not to worry. We're glad you stepped up to be BCCE treasurer.
Thank you. Thank you. And I hope to be here more present in the future with you guys. It's very important work and I really value you. Thank you.
Thank you. Super.
Thank you. Thanks.
So that's pretty much, I know I missed union report, which is fine. I just also wanted to let the commission know quickly that I have been working, or the union, I should say, have been working strongly with Shaheen at Berkeley High School to support safety. We are really concerned with the safety, of course, of all our students throughout Berkeley Unified School District, but specifically Berkeley High School, where we're just trying to make sure that the safety, the trainings and everything for our safety officers are being given. I know they have this special training that's coming up. The first one will be Monday, and then they have another training that will happen, and then the district will negotiate with the union on the third training, which will be on a Saturday. So, we'll be also working with Charlie on some other ideas that the union has. So we're looking forward to that meeting that I think we have with you on Tuesday, Charlie. And, that's just pretty much just the union report. But I just want to let you know that I appreciate you all really, truly, for even taking the time to go through the merit rules. I have been looking at them, and I know there are just some that just really needs to be redone. So the fact that you're taking your time to go line for line, Izzy and Charlie and everyone who's involved in that, the union is greatly appreciative for that. So thank you.
Thank you. I saw Commissioner Roeder's hand next, so we'll go with him next.
Yeah, and the only very quick comment was that after my original comment at the beginning of the meeting, I'm very, very pleased to hear that October 12th is now the date that the contract for the compensation and classification study will be presented to the board for approval. And assuming that it's going to be approved, then we can go forward with our special meeting on the 20th, where we'll have the organization that will be conducting that study present, and we can all ask them questions and give them advice.
Whether they want it or not.
Whether they want it or not.
Okay.
We're good at giving advice.
All right, great. Thank you. I see Frank has his hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question. I'm working, so I was trying to listen to everything, but I was in a bad spot here and there, so I didn't probably hear everything. Did you guys certify the list for like the IAs and IT? That was on the agenda.
Oh
too,
yeah,
right?
that was a while back. in the
Okay.
agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't hear it. So thank you.
Yes. Yeah. No, we did that. Do others have anybody else? I have one comment, and that is also having to do with the planned October 12th adding of the contract for the class and comp study. And I'm disturbed that we don't have a good understanding of why it was delayed. And I plan to check when the agenda is issued on the 7th. And I hope Secretary Castillo will check as well. And if it's not on there, I hope it's on there, but we've kind of done this dance a few times. If it's not on there, Secretary, I hope you'll consider reaching out to us for a special meeting that we can convene and draft a communication to the superintendent expressing our concern. Okay, the delays worry me, and I'm not sure what's going on.
Sorry.
And that you're not getting a real clear answer, except next time. I've seen this before also. So I want to suggest that we do that.
Chairperson, I can talk to you at some point. I do have some detail
Okay.
as to why, but maybe that's just better if I
Okay,
talk to you offline.
it's fine. We can take it offline. All right. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, let's move on. Our next meetings. So we have a meeting on Thursday, October 20th at 2 p.m. and that's a two-parter. One is to receive, we hope, a presentation from our class and comp service provider study mates. And the other is to have a discussion with our outside counsel about questions that we have accumulated in our merit rules discussions. There's a meeting on the 25th on Tuesday between 3:30 and 6:30, and that's to do our next installment of work on the merit rules. And I just want to take a minute. I should have done this in my my public comment. Denise Diggs Ray has just been a stalwart at these meetings, and I want to make sure Denise gets recognized because I know she's been carrying a lot of the continuity on this and has given us good things to think about. Our last next meeting is our regular meeting on November 3rd at 4:30, and that's a Thursday, as always. So with that, it's 6:40. We'll adjourn. Have a great night, everybody, and see you in a couple weeks.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.